Episode number 877. Solutions Focus. Think big, act small.
You're listening to the official BNI podcast with BNI founder and Chief Visionary Officer, Dr. Ivan Misner. Stay tuned for networking and referral marketing tips from the man who's been called the father of modern networking, along with suggestions and insights into getting the most from your membership in the world's largest networking organization, BNI.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the official BNI podcast. I'm Priscilla Rice, and I'm coming to you from Live Oak Recording Studio in Berkeley, California, and I'm joined on the phone today by the founder and the Chief Visionary Officer of BNI, Dr. Ivan Misner. Hello, Ivan. How are you, and where are you?
I am at my home office in Austin, Texas. I'm actually in town for almost 6 weeks, which is like really rare. And I'm not on the road. I just finished a part of the Founders Education series for this month called Effective Presentation Skills. I would urge you, if you're a member of BNI, to go to Business Builder. If you weren't there live, go to Business Builder in BNI and check out my Effective Presentation Skills presentation.
Okay, that sounds good.
So I have back this week Dr. Mark McCurgo, who's an author of and a consultant and speaker. As we talked about last week, he's the co-author of the book, The Solutions Focus, the third edition. And Mark has been a friend for many years. I mentioned him in my latest book, The Third Paradigm, where we talk about co-creation and the importance of working together and holding the vision, not the obstacles. And the Solutions Focus book was really an important aspect of helping to hold the vision in a number of projects that I've had over the year. And we've got Mark on today to talk more about some of the material from his book. And I didn't mention last week, but it'll be in the transcript. Go to thesolutionsfocus.com to get copies of the book, or to a local bookstore, and of course on Amazon. Mark, welcome back to BNI Podcast.
Hi, Ivan. Great to be with you again. I'm calling in from Edinburgh, Scotland today. And we're having a great late summer here, and it's great to be hearing about all you folks in the US.
It's beautiful here in Austin. It's actually in the 80s, which is kind of rare, but for this time of year. But it's great. So I've been to Edinburgh, loved it. As a matter of fact, I think one of the best parties I've ever been to was a Bobby Burns supper in Edinburgh, which was crazy.
Yeah, well, Burns Night's a great thing. In January, we all have haggis and whiskey, and everybody loves it.
Yep, it was a very notable evening. Well, we're here today to talk more about the Solutions Focus third edition. Love the book, and let's start by talking about working on with tiny signs of progress and small steps being the key. And this is important for you listening to this in terms at your chapter level, and making tiny signs of progress, just little things to do to adjust, to move the chapter in the right direction. Over to you, Mark.
So there's two things here, Ivan. There's tiny signs and then there's small steps. And people think, they have the idea that if you have a big problem, you need a big plan or a big step to do something about it. But it turns out that's not the case at all. And my experience is very much that the bigger the issue, the smaller the step that is going to unlock it and start to reorient things and move things in a useful direction. May not solve the whole thing, but the temptation is to think big when what you really want to do is think big at the beginning. What do we want to have happen here? What's working already? And then get really small. So I love to ask people, what would be the first tiny signs that things were getting better here? The first tiny signs. And then they give me a tiny sign, which is, somebody would write a report about something. And I say, no, that's a big sign. Give me a tiny sign. What's the first tiny sign that you might see like tomorrow morning or this afternoon that would let you know that something was happening, that was starting to move things in the right direction? So that's a sign that hasn't happened yet, but it's something that would be useful. And the curious thing I've found over many, many years of working with Solutions Focus is that if you get people talking about these tiny signs that haven't happened yet, they start to get the idea somehow that if some of those signs happen, that would be a good thing. So, and these tiny signs are all actionable. That's the wonderful thing. So you talk about a tiny sign that somebody would come into the office and smile at the other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that, while it's not yet an action, it's something that could be done. And so these very tiny signs can easily turn into small actions. And that's one of the chapters in the book, is all about the huge value of small actions. And this is about how we go from kind of stuck to starting to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the really exciting part, because stuckness is frustrating. People hate being stuck. They feel trapped. Things are wrong. They know things are wrong, but they can't figure out what to do. Whereas if we start to talk about small, tiny signs that things were getting better, and then put in some of those signs into action, people start to get the idea that we're moving forward. And then once you're moving, you can start to move a bit faster and build on it and a bit faster. It's a little bit like getting an automobile or a train moving. The hardest part is the first little bit, actually starting to move. That's the point where you need to put the most oomph in. And then as things begin to turn, the wheels begin to turn, you can add more, and you learn more about how to move forward. And then you can kind of begin to make more and more progress with more and more confidence and more enthusiasm and more pulling the group together. So take this idea. If you're really, really stuck, don't look for a big thing. Think about a really small thing that would help to move things forward, and then go with that and see what happens. See what happens. Most of the time, you'll find it will help, and things will start to move in a little useful direction. And hey, even if it doesn't, you only did a small thing, right? You didn't invest a lot in this, so you can go back and have another think, and learn from your experience and try another small step. So this is a really efficient way of working, as well as an effective way of making progress when things are really tough, things are really stuck, and honestly, you're at your wit's end. That's when solutions focus works really, really well.
I remember you telling a story at one Transformational Leadership Council meeting where you were working with a client and they had a whole list of problems, and they created the list, and you told them to triage it, as I recall. What are the top 3 issues? And as I remember the story, you said you'd come, work on these top 3 issues, take small steps, on these 3 issues, and that they really didn't call you back, because once they started fixing those top 3 issues, everything else kind of fell into place. Am I getting that story right?
That's right, absolutely. And it happens again and again and again. It's not very good for my consulting practice, but it's really good for my clients. That everything is connected, and this is not a hippy dippy thing about connections. This is about, you change one thing and that changes something else, and that knocks onto something else, and then it affects something else. And when people are starting to succeed at work, hey, guess what? They go home and they're in a better position when they go home, and so their family life maybe starts to take a little upturn, and their relationships with their kids might start to improve, and whatever, and their work in their connections with the community might improve. So there's all sorts of knock-on effects. So one thing leads to another, and you just can't tell at the beginning quite how this is going to pan out, which is one of the wonderful things about solutions focus. So it's not a kind of guaranteed do this and that will happen. It's do this and watch to see what happens. And if you've done the first conversation right, the first thing will be something useful, but then other things will happen too. And as I said, when people are stuck, they are frustrated and angry. When things are starting to move, people say, okay, right, let's go with this. Come on. And that's where I want people to be. It's feeling empowered, feeling that they have some kind of, control or influence, at least, over what's happening in their lives and in their businesses and in their work and in their relationships. And that at that point, they think, okay, maybe I have got this after all. And that's the difference that solutions focus can make. You go from really stuck, focused on the problem, to thinking about what you want, thinking about what's working, thinking about tiny signs and small steps. And within literally minutes, sometimes you have some kind of connection and useful idea that things can move forward, are starting to move forward. and we're off again, and life has begun again.
So if you're listening to this, I want you to really think about how this applies to your BNI chapter and of course your business, but your BNI chapter, because there are oftentimes just some small steps that you can take that really start turning around a BNI group. And what Mark is talking about is really powerful. So Mark, we're almost out of time, but there are a couple of other quick things I wanted to talk about. One was doing this in a rapidly changing world. Any quick thoughts on that?
It fits really well with our rapidly changing world. Problem solving was made for a very steady, static world where things don't change very much. But if things are changing, and goodness knows they are at the moment for all of us in many ways, then solutions focus. What do we want? Ask where do we want to go, not what's wrong or where have we come from. Such a powerful way of starting. And then and you're taking account of all the changes that are happening already, because where we want to go tomorrow might be different to where we wanted to go yesterday. That's okay. And you just take account of that.
Well, the last thing I just want to touch upon, you've covered a little, but I think it's a great thing to end on, and that's what's more helpful, to ask what's wrong or to ask what's wanted. And man, this is needed. You get a group of people together, 30, 40, 50, 60 people. It's really easy to focus on all the negativity and not what's wanted. And can you just tell us one more time?
It's clearly, I think it's more valuable to ask what's wanted. But here's the thing. It's good also to agree we need to do something about it.
Yes.
There's a thing here that we need to tackle. Okay. We all agree that this is a thing that's worth tackling. Yes. Okay. Now what do we want to have happen here?
And that's where most of the time needs to be spent on is.
That's right. That's right. But it's good. It's good. I'm not saying you should never ask what the problem is ever again. And even I do that right at the start, just to make sure that we're kind of focusing on the right thing to begin with. And then when you start talking about what do we want, it's not just about the thing that's wrong. It's about all sorts of other things too. And it's such a richer and wider and more empowering and embracing conversation when you talk about how could things be here if things were going really well?
Yeah,
it's a marvelous thing, and it frees us up to think about all kinds of things, including things maybe we don't have yet, we haven't invented yet, we don't know how to do yet, but we can start to imagine that they might be useful.
Mark, thank you so much for being on BNI Podcast again. For those of you listening, I have recommended Mark's book for many years. You can get a copy or view his website, thesolutionsfocus.com. The book is available online and in most major bookstores. It is coming out this month. The month this is coming out on my podcast. But you can pre-order it if you're early. And
there's also an audio book too. For the first time for its third edition, we have an official audio book which you can order through all the usual channels. If you'd rather listen to it than read it.
I urge people to get this book. It's made a big change in the way I work in the organization, and I think it can make a big change for you. Mark, thanks for being on. Let me hand it over to Priscilla.
Okay, well, that was wonderful. Thank you both for that. This podcast is sponsored by MeisnerAudioPrograms.com. These audio programs will provide you with the tools and the inspiration to powerfully enhance your BNI experience. So check out the great material that's available to you at MeisnerAudioPrograms.com. And then use the promo code IVAN50 for 50% off of everything. All of the proceeds go to the BNI Foundation. Thank you so much for listening. This is Priscilla Rice, and we look forward to having you join us again next week for another exciting episode of the official BNI podcast.